The time has finally come to talk about the very first episode of the brand new TMNT series titled Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Episode 1 titled Mystic Mayhem. So, this series opens up with a small creature being chased across the streets of New York by two tracksuit wearing men. Unfortunately for them, this creature is able to escape using its teleportation abilities. So, that's a bit of a setup for the very first part of this season. It's going to be very similar to the 2007 TMNT movie where you had these creatures out there in the world, just kind of inhabiting the city of New York without normal people really noticing or even caring to some certain degree. We then cut to a rooftop soiree where a bit of a deal is going down, and it seems like our boys, the TMNT, are ready to pop in on it. They send out a grappling line and go shooting across, only to bypass the building and then go straight to cannonballing into a pool. So that's a nice way of showing off that this series is going to be far less serious than many of the other incarnations. You know, even the 87 series, which could be very goofy in a lot of areas, would take itself seriously from time to time. Not always, but from time to time. And so we're going a little more in that direction. Although TMNT for a while has always been very goofy, with the only series that actually tried to take itself serious in a lot of places being the 2003 series. So they have a little photo taken with April, who has the keys to this rooftop, and she'd even drop Sandra on it, so I believe she works here as probably a pool cleaner, if nothing else. And as they get ready to go to their next hangout location, Raph notices the creature from earlier. He tries to befriend it, but it immediately takes a liking to April. They're then taken off guard by the introduction of the two men from earlier, and they try to play it off as they are, cosplayers on their way to a convention. The men both don't buy it, but they also transform in these dog riding mystical warriors, which again, it should very much tell you that this is going to be a very different turn for most TMNT series. Whereas a lot of them always kind of start off kind of ground level and work their way up to the mystical element, this series is going balls to the wall in just right off the bat. And as our boys pull out all their classic weaponry, except for Donnie, who has a more high-tech bow staff, very much like the in space part of the 2012 series, where Donnie had more of a high-tech bow staff that could analyze and do all this futuristic stuff. And so we immediately find that our boys aren't really able to use their weaponry as effectively as our more classic incarnations, with most of their weaponry being destroyed in various ways and their ninja skills being very much not up to par. They immediately get trounced, and the mystical warriors capture the creature and go through this dimensional portal, immediately followed by April, and it closes behind them. They have no way of really going through it, but Mikey does notice that it resembles an object within Master Splinter's Do Not Touch collection. They try to figure out how to get it without Splinter noticing, but Splinter is very much too comfy in his little section to move. And this is my first real immediate gripe with this series, because portraying Master Splinter, who has always been very much a, prominent figure in the TMNT landscape, as someone who is both fat and lazy, I have issues with that. You know, the boys have always been, while they could be goof offs, they were always a little more disciplined. They were trained, they were very capable in their ninjutsu practices, and it's hard to see this guy as being one to be the one to teach them. Although it does kind of harken back to, if anyone remembers back in the 2003 series, the Ancient One, who was also very obese, but actually capable on top of that. So that might be what they're going with here. It's just unfortunate because each incarnation of Splinter up into this point just got cooler and cooler. The original 87 version was actually pretty awesome, and then you got the 90s 2003 Splinter, who kicked all kinds of butt but seemed to be aged up to the point of almost being crippled. And then you got the 2012 Splinter, who was very large, imposing, and uber capable. Like, probably one of the best renditions of Splinter out there. And then to go to this one, it's a very jarring downgrade. Because remember, it hasn't been that long since the 2012 series actually ended. So it's still fairly fresh in our minds. But Leo does manage to get the device because immediately Splinter fell asleep, which is very. I've already said my piece on Splinter. Moving on. And then Mikey, who is the artist of the crew, actually manages to, remember and draw out the symbol that the mystical warriors used to open up the gateway. And it leads them to this otherworldly place that seems very much like it would be a dimension. What was it? ZX? The world where the universe where the Utrom usually came from. However, we come to find out that it's simply underneath New York, very similar to the underground city in the earlier seasons of the 2003 TMNT series. There was this whole hidden city underground where these mutated people lived. So, very similar to that. And even, I think multiple series throughout TMNT history have had underground cities with mutagen or mystic groups, or in this case, a combination of the two. So they find the place where, the teleporting dog thing is being held, along with a random bypasser. And we are introduced to our villain of this series and the stand in for the Shredder, Lord Daxam. Now, this guy is also going to be the leader of the Foot Clan in this series. So it leaves a lot of questions as to what exactly his end goal in all of this. Because at least with Oroku Saki in the original series, well, within the other series, I guess I should say, it was always kind of domination. But here he seems to kind of want a little bit of kind of mutant army uprising, so to speak. And so he takes this, bauble from the teleporting dog, which leaves a lot of questions as to why this creature had it in the first place. And he pours it into this machine with various things called mosquitoes, which would inject various people with the mutagen and then mutate them into various creatures. Oh, we're already getting our mutant element, but it's interesting that this time, for probably the first time, it's in no way related to the Utrom as a whole. And so the turtles start to wonder if this might have some connection with their origin, which, yeah, it probably does. Usually it always does. But this is a more interesting take, as for the first time, there's a lot of mystery as to exactly how this mutagen ties into the turtles themselves. April then leads the turtles to a kind of warehouse of sorts to get some new weaponry in order to fight off the villains. This is not the first time the turtles have switched up weaponry, and it'll probably definitely not be the last time. With Leo taking on a regular Odachi sword, you know, various forms of weaponry. I mean, it's gone through all the various series, especially during the time when Mikey couldn't use his uh, nunchucks because of censoring, so that was kind of a thing for a limited amount of time, I guess I really should say. What was all the weaponry? Ultimately, Donnie does choose to keep his high tech bow staff because that's already enough of an upgrade, even though he has some issues here and there with it. But he chooses not to take the staff and instead takes this kind of mystic crystal. So he's definitely going to trick out his bow staff with this. But Donnie's used a variety of different weaponry, like in the last episode where he used the Byakko, which was kind of like a trident-like object in the 2003 series, where Leo used the Gunshin, which was just a long sword. Mikey used the, what was it, the Inazuma, which was kind of this segmented staff, and then Raph used a what was it? Banrai, which were like sickles, and even in like other series, like the 2012 series, Donnie had a bladed weapon instead, where it wasn't just a bow staff; it was a naginata. I mean, a naginata, which was just a staff with a blade on the end. We have what was it? Mikey used the Kusari Gama, which were looked like normal nunchucks, but they would stick out these blades sometimes that he'd use. So here we have the turtles using more upgraded weapon with Raph using Tonfa, much like he had actually used in the Mirage comics version of the TMNT series, at least in later issues down the line. There was also, you have Leo wielding the, like I said previously, the Odachi sword, very bit of like more what a samurai would use, if nothing else. Uh, Mikey uses Manriki Gusari, which he has used a multiple amount of times throughout the series, specifically in the Mirage series, the 1987 series, which replaced his original like weaponry later down the line because they wanted to get away from nunchucks. He could still use swords, but no nunchucks because that could actually hurt people or some crap like that. And even that was the Manriki Gusari were replaced with the turtle line later down the line as well. So there was that. And Donnie still keeps his high-tech bow staff. So just a little bit of background on the fact that anyone who, I've heard a few whispers about people who took issue with the turtles using alternate weapons here, but they've always done that throughout the history, so no biggie there. So they confront the villain, who is immediately mesmerized by the turtle, since he's all about genetic mutation, and these are basically everything he's been working towards: skilled warriors who are actually able to be a combative force. April goes in to try to free the dog creature, but are immediately taken on by Lord Daxam's henchmen. Meanwhile, Daxam starts sending out these vines, and then this giant golem creature that immediately starts to pound the turtles. However, Leo goes in, slices off its leg, and Raph manages to take it down with a nice swift body slam. They then try to go in on Lord Daxam, only for them to kind of be pretty much no match for him for the most part. However, Mikey goes in with his what you would call it, Monriki Gusari, which have this ball on the end that when it starts to spin, almost like a yo-yo, it creates this demonic, like, jack-o'-lantern flaming skull thing that takes Mikey on this wild ride across the lab and destroys a lot of the equipment, probably leading to a self-destruct. Raph tries to try out his Tonfa, but he immediately gets blown back by them. And Leo tries to use his sword, but a portal opens up below him, and he immediately starts falling into Affinity, which stopping him at that velocity should kill him, or even being at that velocity should kill him. Meanwhile, Donnie does manage to hold his own up against Lord Daxam, but Mikey kind of gets him entangled in his weapon, and everyone's pretty much incapacitated. Lord Daxam is a little taken aback by the fact that they seem to be very untrained for the most part, which I, I have mixed feelings towards, because while they should always start off fairly untrained and then work their way towards being better ninja, which we saw it in the 2003 series and we saw it in the 2012 series. They start off fairly skilled, but are shown to be still lacking, and then towards the end of the series they're uber experienced ninja warriors. So they're all captured by Daxam. However, his lab starts to explode, and it releases all the mosquitoes into the air, and it releases the little dog creature, who immediately teleports everyone to safety. Mikey opens up the portal, they go through, and unfortunately they also destroy the device that helped them get to that other lower level. But I mean, it's under New York. They'll probably figure out a way to get to it pretty easily. And April decides to name the creature Mayhem because of all the mayhem they went through in order to rescue the creature. And ultimately they decide to dub themselves superheroes, although not quite knowing what to name them. Gosh, you should go with TMN, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It sounds like a pretty catchy name. However, they also noticed that a lot of the mosquitoes have been released into New York unwittingly by them and their fight with Lord Daxam. And that's going to be the basis for the Monster of the Week formula that we're going to get later on into the series. And we'll just see where this goes, will Lord Daxam actually make a prominent enough villain for the series? I know a lot of series have tried that before, namely the Chojin Dunsetsu Hen, Mutant Turtles Chojin Dunsetsu Hen, which tried to lean more to another villain, but still had the Shredder there. That was a Japanese series. Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation tried to go their way with the, what was it, Dragon King, Dragon Lord, whatever, and that series was hot garbage. And even the 2017 Turtles movie tried to not go that direction, and that movie was forgettable as all get out. So, will this series actually manage to stand on its own without the Shredder as a prominent villain? Time will tell. The best thing about this series is the animation, which is on point. You saw it during the opening and you see it throughout this episode. When the fight scenes get into gear, the action is fantastic, and I can't wait to see more of that. And if nothing else, that'll bring me back every time. Just that action, which TMNT just keeps getting better with each series in terms of action. But with this series going such a fun and colorful route, if we'll get action as intense as in the 2012 series, time will tell. But it's fun enough, especially for the first episode. We'll really see where it comes down to by the end of this season. Because, a lot of people hated on the 2012 series when that came out, only for it to be seen as like a very fantastic series. And one of the best TMNT series out there. So, tell me your thoughts on this series in the comments below. What were your thoughts on the very first episode? Where you think this series is gonna go? And you think it's gonna be any good? Just give me a heads up on how you feel about the whole thing, and tell me your thoughts. About what I had to say about the series in the comments below. What was how do you feel about the theme song? Hey, that is pretty bumping. Where do you think it ranks in terms of opening themes? If I get enough comments, I might even throw my own list out there. But if you liked what I had to say about this episode, leave me a like, and if you didn't, feel free to leave me a dislike. Lets me know where I stand in terms of videos, and subscribe for more Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They're back, baby.